I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and today with me I've got one of Australia's most popular small SUVs, the Mazda CX-3. And if you're from Australia, you will undoubtedly have seen plenty of these little trucks getting around, so it must be doing something right. In fact, the only car that beats it in the sales charts here in this class is the Mitsubishi ASX, and they are most popular with rental car companies. The CX-3 is not. Actual people buy this thing. So what makes it so popular and so good? I reckon it starts with the looks. The proportions are right, it's very small, so it's pretty well sized for the city. And this one looks especially smart. This is the new Akari LE grade. It's a top-end CX-3, new for 2019. And you get stuff like these platinum finished 18-inch wheels outside, Napa leather inside, so it's all getting a little bit fancy. It's also pretty affordable at the lower end. This one is over 40 grand on the road. Not sure how much sense that actually makes, but we'll talk more about that as we have a look in the cabin and see what makes the CX-3 so special among this diverse field, because there's actually more than 15 cars competing in the small SUV class here. So to get second place is not bad at all. And I reckon the cabin helps out with that. Yes, it's pretty small and compact in here, so there's not a huge amount of shoulder room between the two seats, but it's smartly laid out. The materials all feel quite nice, especially as you get into the grades at the upper end of the range, the S Touring, the Akari, and this LE. So you get nice leather finishes up here on the dash, soft touch where your knee rests. That's nice, isn't it? Plus Napa leather seats in the LE. You only get them in this dark russet brown color with white trim and stitching. That won't be for everybody, but you know what? I actually don't mind it. The standard Akari doesn't get Napa. It gets normal leather, black or white. But if you go for lower end CX-3s, it is basically cloth or Alcantara-ish trim. You get this nice leather steering wheel in front of you. That feels nice and premium. You also get a 7-inch touchscreen now across the CX-3 range. That's not that big, and it's starting to date in terms of the software, but you know what? It's easy to use. The navigation works well. The Bluetooth connection is rock solid. You can get CarPlay. It costs 500 bucks. What's going on there, Mazda? It really should be standard on a 2019 car, don't you reckon? Looking forward, the dials are quite plain, but you do get a really good color heads-up display, which you can actually see with polarized sunglasses. Can't say the same for many windscreen projected versions of that feature. One thing I do like is that you control all the infotainment through a panel down here between the seats, so it's nice and safe to use while you're driving. Get a nice sunroof in the upper end CX-3s as well, and practicality, it's not bad. There's some storage between the seats, an armrest here where you've got big space for very large drinks if, for example, you enjoy a trip to Starbucks and like to get the biggest size, and also a tray ahead of the shifter with 2 powered USB ports. But on that, they might be powered, but the power is an absolute trickle. So if you own an iPhone 10 like I do, or an even more powerful smartphone, you'll find that it charges extremely slowly, unless you get CarPlay, that is, because it beefs up one of them to 2.1 amps. And you know what? The other thing that the CX-3 can't do all that well is carry big people in the back. So let's check out the space now. Now, this won't be such an issue if you're going to use this car for transporting your small kids around, as I literally lose my hat because this roofline is quite low. But as you can see, this isn't really a car for adults, is it? Headroom is just acceptable for 6-footers, but legroom and tow room really aren't. I find that I'm right up against this seat here. So look, if you're friends with people that you don't like and you want to squash them, the CX-3 would be good. Also, if you still have kids under maybe the age of about 12, unless you're raising basketball superstars, this won't be an issue. You do get a nice armrest in the back though. There are cup holders. Ooh, I see how that works. You fold them out like that. Interesting. No USB power in the armrest of the CX-3, unlike, for example, the CX-5 or CX-9. And disappointingly, no rear air vents either. Apparently people back here don't need to breathe. Go figure. There's also bottle holders in the doors at least, so you can drink in the second row, but ultimately this vehicle is focused on the people up front. But what about boot space? Well, we'll come around the back. It's a manual tailgate. I mean, that's all right, isn't it? It's tiny. Open that up. You'll have to excuse the bit of dirt around the edge, as I saw that it said all-wheel drive, so I decided to take it off-road. And you'll see that the boot It's compact, but if you stack things, they do fit. Officially, there's 264 litres of space back there. Take out the small Chasing Cars suitcase so you can get a bit of a better view. This stuff is really wedged in, so don't ask me to remove it, I won't be able to. The other thing you'll notice is in order to get 3 bags in the back, I've had to ditch the cargo cover, and that's blown away over the hill over there, so I'm probably not going to be able to fetch that either. Moral of the story is, not a huge boot. If you're after bigger space, I'd look at a Honda HR-V. So what is the Mazda CX-3 like to drive? Well, you know, it's actually pretty good. And like several other cars in the Mazda lineup, the CX-3 has actually gotten better to drive since it was launched. That's because the brand at the moment has this philosophy of continuous improvement. So even after the car comes out, every year or so they tend to do suspension updates, refinement changes, they add a bit of sound deadening. So, you know, we've seen that occur in the Mazda 3 and in the Mazda 6. And now it's come to the CX-3. So when this car launched, I actually thought it was a little bit unrefined, and you know, the suspension was perhaps a bit coarse and it was really noisy. All of those things have been improved. It's still not a paragon of refinement. I still think the Toyota C-HR is more comfortable and quieter when it goes down the road, but the CX-3 has made a pretty big improvement. What's under the bonnet? Well, there's only one engine in the Akari LE, but the wider CX-3 range is offered with 2. There's a naturally aspirated petrol, a 2-litre 4-cylinder, and that's what I've got here. That produces 110 kilowatts of power, right up high in the rev range because there's no turbo, and 195 newton meters of torque. Impressively only at 2800 revs, which isn't as high as you might expect for a turboless engine. The other option in the rest of the range is a 1.5 litre turbo diesel, and that's actually my favourite CX-3 engine, but only 1% of people buy it, so that's why we're concentrating on the petrol today. The petrol isn't the world's best unit. It certainly gets the job done. It isn't fast, but around town it's zippy enough, and on the open road, if you really stay up it for the rent, then it can get the job done. It's just you really have to rev out this motor to get the best from it, and that's what you'd expect from a power figure at such high RPM. Now, the 6-speed auto is a really excellent gearbox, and it does its best to extract the most value from the engine that it can. It's always changing gears, you know, not in a jerky way or anything. It's a pretty smooth gearbox, but it tries to keep you in that torque band as much as possible. In fact, the gearbox has a sport calibration where if you're out on a good back road, just flick that on and it does a really good job of keeping the CX-3 in lower gears. However, if you can afford the extra, I would definitely look at the turbo diesel, as I just think it's more drivable every day. What you can't complain about though is the CX-3's handling. I love the way this car goes down a back road. The steering is actually almost flawless for this class. It's direct, it's meaty and feelsome, and you just feel a great connection to the front wheels. The chassis as well is really, really sweet on this thing. You can really chuck it into bends and feel it respond very nicely. In fact, once you're already sort of with a fair bit of lock in a corner, just add a little bit more and the CX-3's chassis will just pirouette the back end around nice and gently, and it doesn't feel a world away from something like a raised MX-5. You can definitely feel the spirit of Mazda's sports cars in this little SUV. The ride quality too strikes a really nice balance between control and enough suppleness such that, you know, it's not uncomfortable to drive around every day. You do feel big bumps and imperfections, but the body control is really good and it's never an uncomfortable car to drive. Equally, it's pretty quiet now thanks to the additional sound insulation. It's not that noisy. You know, once you're at 80 or 100 on the highway, you can have a conversation with the other people in the car, which is not always something that we could say for Mazdas. In fact, the biggest contributor to the noise is actually this 2-litre petrol engine. Another really good aspect to the CX-3 is its safety features. Even the base model has AEB in forward and reverse and a reversing camera, and as you step up from there, you just get more stuff for your money. This Akari LE has everything, as does the Akari underneath it, so blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, lane departure warning, driver fatigue detection, traffic sign recognition, you name it, it's pretty well got it. Adaptive cruise with stop and go as well. But the only thing it doesn't have is adaptive lane keep assist. It doesn't keep you centered in the middle of the lane. That's probably something we'll see on the next generation CX-3. So those are my opinions on the Mazda CX-3. Even though this vehicle has been out for about 4 years or so, I reckon it's still one of the better small SUVs, especially to drive. And I mean that in a couple of ways. In town, it's really maneuverable and easy to park because it's pretty small. But out on a good road, it's actually a great car to drive at pace because the sweet chassis and great steering make it really amusing. I think it looks good as well, inside and out, and it's really compelling towards the bottom of the range. Closer to 20 grand than 40 grand, but at least if you are after a CX-3 with all the trimmings Mazda can provide, and the Akari LE is a good fit for that. Now, if you like this video, please do like it below, comment, share it with your friends, and also subscribe to Chasing Cars for our weekly in-depth Australian car reviews.